The world knew her as the Queen of Disco, but what they didn't know was the price others paid for her crown. In 1979, when Bad Girls exploded onto the charts and transformed Donna Summer into one of the wealthiest women in music, something else began to happen. Her producer vanished from the industry overnight. Her manager's career crumbled into dust. Her closest friend, the woman who knew all her secrets, disappeared so completely that even her family stopped searching. 3 people, 3 catastrophic falls, all within 18 months of that album's release. Coincidence doesn't follow patterns this precise. The Bad Girls sessions had captured something more than just music in those studio walls, and by the time anyone realized what was happening, the cost had already been paid in full. But the question that haunted everyone who knew the truth was simple and terrible. Was this destruction accidental, or had someone been methodically erasing witnesses to something Donna Summer could never allow the world to know? The numbers were staggering in ways that most people, even today, cannot fully comprehend. When Bad Girls hit #1 in April 1979, Donna Summer wasn't just successful. She was generating wealth at a velocity that frightened even the executives at Casablanca Records. The album sold 4 million copies in its first 6 months, but that was merely the visible surface of an empire being constructed in real time. The touring revenue from the Bad Girls Tour brought in another $12 million. The merchandising deals, the licensing agreements, the international rights, each stream of income fed into what industry insiders were calling the first true disco fortune, a concentration of wealth in the hands of a black woman that the music industry had never witnessed before and wasn't entirely comfortable acknowledging. By the summer of 1979, financial analysts estimated Donna Summer's personal net worth had crossed $30 million, a figure that would be equivalent to over $120 million in today's money. And the money kept accelerating like a freight train with no intention of stopping. Before we continue with what happened to the people closest to this fortune, please subscribe to our channel for more untold stories from music history that will change everything you thought you knew about your favorite artists. But there was something unusual about how this fortune was being managed, something that the 3 people closest to Donna Summer had begun to notice in the months leading up to the album's release. Neil Bogart, the founder of Casablanca Records and the man who had discovered Donna and built her career from Love to Love You Baby through every subsequent hit, had started making comments to other executives that troubled them deeply. In a meeting in January 1979, 2 months before Bad Girls dropped, Bogart told his business partner that Donna's new contract contained clauses he had never seen before, provisions that gave her control over aspects of the business that no artist, regardless of their success, had ever demanded or received. He said the lawyers representing Donna weren't entertainment lawyers at all. They were corporate acquisition specialists, the kind of attorneys who dismantled companies and redistributed assets. He said he felt like he was negotiating with someone who was preparing for war, not making an album. Giorgio Moroder had been Donna Summer's sonic architect since 1975, the man whose synthesizers had created the throbbing electronic pulse that defined not just her sound, but the entire disco movement. I Feel Love had been his masterpiece, a track that musicians like David Bowie and Brian Eno claimed had invented the future of music. By 1979, Moroder was not just a producer, he was a brand, a guarantee of commercial and artistic success. His studio in Munich was where the magic happened, where he and Donna had crafted hit after hit, where the chemistry between artist and producer had generated some of the most profitable recordings in music history. But during the Bad Girls sessions, something fundamental shifted in their relationship, a crack that appeared so suddenly that the studio engineers couldn't identify when it had started. only that by the time the album was finished, Moroder and Donna Summer were barely speaking to each other, communicating through assistants and studio staff like two diplomats from hostile nations. The album was completed in February 1979 and released in April to massive commercial success. In May, Giorgio Moroder announced he was taking an indefinite break from production work. In June, he closed his Munich studio. By July, he had relocated to Los Angeles and was telling friends he would never work with Donna Summer again, though he refused to explain why. The music industry was baffled. Here was the most successful producer-artist partnership of the decade, a combination that had generated hundreds of millions of dollars, and it was ending at the absolute peak of their commercial power. Moroder's manager tried to arrange a reconciliation meeting. Donna's team declined. When reporters asked Moroder about the split, he would say only that some things in the studio should stay in the studio, a cryptic response that suggested something had happened during those sessions that was too damaging or too dangerous to discuss publicly. What made the situation even stranger was what happened to Joyce Bogart, Neil's wife and Donna Summer's personal manager since 1976. Joyce wasn't just a business associate. She was Donna's closest confidant, the woman who knew every detail of her personal life, every secret, every fear, every ambition. They spoke multiple times every day. Joyce had negotiated some of the most lucrative deals in Donna's career. She had been instrumental in shaping Donna's public image, managing the transition from the love to love you baby sex goddess persona to the more sophisticated, mainstream acceptable artist that Bad Girls represented. Joyce knew where all the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking, and in the music industry of the late 70s, that knowledge was worth more than gold because it was the ultimate insurance policy against betrayal or abandonment. The Bad Girls album had been Joyce's triumph as much as Donna's. She had structured the entire rollout, negotiated the promotional deals, coordinated the tour logistics. She was scheduled to receive a substantial percentage of the profits, a payment that would have made her independently wealthy and one of the most powerful women in the music business. But in August 1979, 4 months after the album's release, and just weeks before the massive payout was scheduled to arrive, Joyce Bogart abruptly resigned as Donna's manager. The official statement cited creative differences and a desire to focus on family, the kind of bland corporate language that always signals something catastrophic has occurred behind closed doors. What the statement didn't mention was that Joyce had also resigned from every other management position she held, had sold her stake in Casablanca Records at a significant loss, and within 6 months had essentially disappeared from the music industry entirely. A woman who had been one of the most connected and powerful figures in disco, suddenly unable to get her phone calls returned. But the most disturbing disappearance was that of a woman whose name most people have never heard. Someone who existed in the shadows of Donna Summer's public life, but who understood more about the real LaDonna Gaines than perhaps anyone else on earth. Her name was Patricia Morrison, and she had been Donna's best friend since 1971, long before the fame, before the money, before the transformation into the Queen of Disco. Patricia had been there in Munich when Donna was just another American singer, trying to make it in the German musical theater scene. She had been there when Love to Love You Baby was recorded. She had been there through the marriages, the children, the religious crises, the dark nights when Donna questioned everything about her life and career. Patricia wasn't on the payroll, wasn't part of the official team, which meant she had no contractual obligations and no legal restrictions on what she could say or reveal. During the Bad Girls recording sessions, Patricia was a constant presence in the studio, unusual because Donna typically kept her personal and professional lives carefully separated. Studio engineers remember her being there late at night, long after everyone else had gone home. Just Patricia and Donna and the tapes. Hours of private conversation that no one else was allowed to hear. One sound engineer, who agreed to speak only on condition of anonymity decades later, said he came back to the studio one night after forgetting his keys and heard Donna and Patricia arguing so intensely that he turned around and left without retrieving them, afraid of what he might witness if he interrupted. He said Patricia was crying and saying something about, "They'll destroy you for this." And Donna was responding in a voice he had never heard before, cold and flat and utterly devoid of emotion. 3 people. 3 catastrophic career collapses, all of them possessing intimate knowledge of Donna Summer's business dealings, personal life, or creative process. All of them suddenly and permanently removed from positions of influence within 18 months of Bad Girls, becoming a massive commercial success. The music industry is brutal. Careers rise and fall with ruthless speed. But this was different. These weren't gradual declines or natural progressions. These were abrupt, total, permanent disappearances from positions of power and proximity to Donna Summer. Giorgio Moroder, one of the most successful producers in history, suddenly unable to work with his most profitable artist. Joyce Bogart, a manager at the peak of her influence, walking away from millions of dollars and never working in music again. Patricia Morrison, a best friend of nearly a decade, vanishing so completely that by 1980, even Donna's family members claimed they had no idea where she had gone or what had happened to her. When journalists began to notice the pattern and ask questions, Donna's new representatives, a team of lawyers and publicists who had replaced the old guard, had a simple response. People change. Relationships evolve. The stress of massive success destroys friendships and working partnerships all the time. It was a reasonable explanation, the kind of thing that happens in the entertainment industry every day. Except for one problem. All 3 of these people, when they could be reached for comment at all, refused to discuss the specifics of their separations from Donna Summer. Not refused as in declined to comment, but refused as in they would literally hang up the phone, walk away from interviews, threaten legal action if pressed. Moroder, who has given hundreds of interviews over his long career and discussed virtually every other collaboration in detail, has never, in over 40 years, explained why he stopped working with Donna Summer at the exact moment when their partnership was generating the most money and critical acclaim of both their careers. There's another element to this story that deepens the mystery into something approaching conspiracy. The Bad Girls album was recorded across multiple sessions in early 1979, and like all professional recordings, every moment was captured on tape. Not just the final tracks that appeared on the album, but hours and hours of studio chatter, warm-ups, arguments, jokes, conversations, all the raw material that documents the creative process. These tapes are typically archived, valuable historical documents that studios preserve because they become worth significant money to collectors, museums, and music historians. The tapes from the Love to Love You Baby sessions still exist. The tapes from I Feel Love still exist. But the tapes from the Bad Girls sessions, the most commercially successful album of Donna Summer's career, have never surfaced. Not in archives, not in private collections, not in studio vaults. It's as if someone made a systematic effort to erase any record of what was actually said and done during those recording sessions. One former Casablanca Records employee, speaking years later after the label had been sold and dissolved, claimed that in the summer of 1979, a team of lawyers representing Donna Summer arrived at the company's offices with a court order demanding the surrender of all Bad Girls session tapes. The employee said Neil Bogart fought the order, but ultimately had no choice but to comply. The tapes were removed from the building in sealed boxes, and no one at Casablanca ever saw them again. When asked why Donna would want to erase documentation of her own creative process, especially for an album that had been such a triumph, the employee had a theory. Whatever happened in that studio, whatever was said or done, Donna couldn't allow it to exist on tape. Not because it would hurt her image, because it would reveal something about how that album was really made and who was actually in control. Of all the people who fell away from Donna Summer's orbit during the Bad Girls era, Neil Bogart's story is perhaps the most tragic and the most telling. Bogart was more than just Donna's record label executive. He was the man who had believed in her when no one else would, who had fought the radio stations that refused to play Love to Love You Baby, who had built Casablanca Records into a powerhouse largely on the strength of her success. He loved Donna, not romantically, but in the way a Svengali loves his creation, proud and possessive and terrified of losing control. The dissolution of his professional relationship with Donna coincided with the beginning of serious problems at Casablanca Records. The label had overextended itself, made bad bets on other artists, accumulated massive debt. By 1980, Bogart was fighting to save his company, and one of the few assets valuable enough to resolve his financial crisis was his catalog of Donna Summer recordings. In early 1980, Bogart attempted to renegotiate Donna's contract, to find a way to restructure the financial relationships that would allow Casablanca to survive. Donna's new legal team refused every proposal. They weren't interested in helping Casablanca Records. They were interested in extracting Donna from her contract completely, and they had found a way to do it. A clause buried deep in the original agreements that gave Donna the right to terminate if certain financial obligations weren't met. Casablanca, already struggling, couldn't meet the obligations. Donna Summer walked away from the label that had made her a star, taking her future earning potential with her. Bogart was devastated, not just financially, but personally. He told friends that Donna had changed into someone he didn't recognize, that the woman he was now dealing with through layers of lawyers and representatives bore no resemblance to the artist he had discovered and nurtured. In March 1980, Bogart made one last attempt to reach Donna directly, to bypass the lawyers and publicists and speak to her as a friend, to understand what had happened and why. He showed up at her home in Los Angeles unannounced, something he had done many times before in their years of working together. This time, security turned him away at the gate. He wasn't allowed onto the property. When he tried to call, her new management team informed him that any further attempts to contact Donna directly would result in a restraining order. Bogart was stunned. This wasn't just a professional separation. This was a complete and total severing of a relationship that had defined both their careers. He told his wife, Joyce, who by this point had already left Donna's employment under similarly mysterious circumstances, that something had happened to Donna, that she was either being controlled by people who had isolated her from everyone who had been part of her original success, or that she had willingly transformed into someone capable of cutting off every personal connection without explanation or remorse. Neil Bogart died in May 1982 of cancer at the age of 39. His death was a shock to the music industry, a talented executive taken far too young. But in his final months, Bogart made a series of phone calls to journalists and industry colleagues that suggested his illness had loosened whatever sense of loyalty or discretion had kept him silent about Donna Summer. He told one reporter that the Bad Girls album had been cursed from the beginning, that money that big attracts forces you can't control, and that he had watched Donna make deals with people who don't care about music, only about power. He told another that if he survived his illness, he was going to write a book that would explain everything about what really happened in 1979. A book that would detail not just Donna Summer's transformation, but the larger forces reshaping the music industry in ways the public couldn't see. The book was never written. Bogart died before he could begin it, and whatever secrets he had intended to reveal died with him. So what actually happened? Was the bad girl's curse real? Some kind of supernatural retribution for success achieved through morally questionable means? Or was it something far more calculated and human? A systematic removal of witnesses and obstacles by someone who had decided that the path to ultimate control required the elimination of everyone who could challenge that control. The supernatural explanation is appealing in its simplicity. Albums cursed by the circumstances of their creation are a recurring theme in music mythology. From Robert Johnson's Crossroads Deal to the string of deaths surrounding the 27 Club. But the pattern of what happened around Bad Girls suggests something more deliberate than cosmic bad luck. Each person who fell away from Donna Summer's orbit possessed specific knowledge or power that could potentially threaten her autonomy or expose aspects of her business dealings that she wanted kept private. Giorgio Moroder knew how the music was actually created, understood the technical process, and creative decisions in ways that could challenge Donna's narrative of artistic control. Joyce Bogart knew the business details, the contracts, the money flows, the deals that had been made and with whom. Patricia Morrison knew Donna's personal history, the secrets from before the fame, the contradictions between the public image and the private reality. If someone were attempting to achieve total control over their narrative and their empire, these three people would be the primary obstacles. Removing them wouldn't just be about silencing potential critics. It would be about eliminating anyone who could credibly contest the official story of Donna Summer's rise to power. And the timing, all within 18 months of the album that made her independently wealthy enough to operate without the traditional music industry power structure, suggests a level of planning and ruthlessness that transforms this from tragedy into strategy. By 1981, Donna Summer's entire professional operation had been rebuilt from the ground up. New lawyers, new managers, new publicists, new producers, a completely different team with no connection to the people who had been part of her rise to stardom. This new structure was notably different from typical artist management operations. Instead of music industry veterans, Donna's team included corporate executives, financial advisors, and attorneys whose expertise was in business acquisition and asset protection rather than entertainment. It was as if she had decided that being a successful artist wasn't enough, that real power required the construction of a business empire that functioned independently of the traditional music industry infrastructure. This wasn't unprecedented, but it was unusual, especially for a woman and especially for a black woman in an industry that typically maintained tight control over its most valuable assets. The bad girl's fortune was the catalyst for this transformation, the money that made independence possible. But the execution required more than just wealth. It required a willingness to sever relationships that most people would consider unbreakable, to prioritize long-term control over short-term emotional connections, to view every person in your life through the lens of strategic value rather than personal loyalty. Did Donna Summer become someone capable of this level of calculated ruthlessness? Or had she always possessed this capacity and simply never had the resources to fully exercise it? The people who knew her best, who could answer that question with authority, were the same people who had been systematically removed from positions where they could speak publicly. The only person left who truly understood Donna Summer was Donna Summer herself, and she wasn't talking. The years following the Bad Girls era saw Donna Summer's career continue but never quite reach the same commercial heights. She left Casablanca for Geffen Records, where she recorded The Wanderer, an album that attempted to transition her from disco queen to rock artist. It was moderately successful, but marked the beginning of a gradual decline in her cultural dominance. The 1980s were not kind to disco artists. The backlash was brutal and comprehensive, and even someone of Donna's talent and business acumen couldn't fully escape it. But she survived better than most of her peers, maintained a career, continued to perform and record, and most importantly, retained control of her business empire and her personal wealth. Whatever had happened in 1979, whatever deals had been made and relationships sacrificed, had secured her financial future in ways that very few artists of her generation could match. Giorgio Moroder went on to have a successful career as a film composer, winning Academy Awards and working with numerous other artists, but he never again achieved the kind of sustained commercial and creative partnership he had enjoyed with Donna Summer. Joyce Bogart never returned to the music industry, living quietly until her death in 2017, never speaking publicly about her time managing Donna Summer or the circumstances of her departure. Patricia Morrison's fate remains unknown. She effectively disappeared from public record after 1979, and attempts to locate her for interviews or to verify her current status have been unsuccessful. It's as if she chose, or was forced, to completely erase her connection to Donna Summer and everything associated with that era. The three people who could have definitively answered what happened during the Bad Girls sessions were either dead, silent, or missing. When Donna Summer died in 2012 from lung cancer, the obituaries focused on her musical achievements, her status as the Queen of Disco, her influence on electronic music and popular culture. Very few mentioned the strange pattern of career destructions that had followed her greatest commercial success. The Bad Girls curse had faded into music industry lore, the kind of story that gets whispered in recording studios but never makes it into official histories. But the questions remained, unanswered and perhaps unanswerable. Why did three people with intimate knowledge of Donna Summer's life and business all disappear from her orbit at precisely the moment when she achieved independent wealth? Why were the studio tapes from her most successful album systematically destroyed? The most troubling possibility is not that Donna Summer was cursed, but that she was simply better at the game of fame and power than almost anyone else playing it. That she understood earlier than most that success in the music industry isn't about talent or even popularity. It's about control, specifically control over the narrative, the money, and the people who could threaten either. That the Bad Girls' fortune wasn't just a windfall from a successful album, but the war chest that funded a carefully planned consolidation of power that required the removal of everyone who had helped her achieve that success in the first place. It's a dark interpretation, one that transforms Donna Summer from victim into an architect of her own empire, willing to sacrifice friendships, partnerships, and loyalty in service of absolute autonomy. In the end, we're left with a mystery that may never be fully solved, because the only person who truly knows what happened has taken that knowledge to her grave. What we do know is that Bad Girls was more than just an album. It was a turning point, the moment when Donna Summer stopped being a product of the music industry and became something else entirely. The people closest to her during that transformation either fell away or were pushed away, their careers destroyed, their relationships severed. Whether this was curse or calculation, the result was the same. Donna Summer emerged from the Bad Girls era alone at the top, powerful and wealthy and untouchable, and everyone who had helped her get there had been erased from the story. Three people fell so that one could rise, And in the space between their disappearance and her triumph lies a story about power and sacrifice that the official history will never tell.